My name's Dave Greenberg, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm tempted to sit in one of these seats, but I would be waiting for Ellen DeGeneres to come along and start interviewing me, and I don't think I'm quite ready for prime time. But we're excited for this opportunity to share. Good, okay. We're excited for this opportunity to share a bit about the project that several of us in the room have been working on for 7 or 8 years, actually, and talk about how that might be something of interest to those of you who use WordPress, implement WordPress, and help your clients with WordPress. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a history of what the heck is this CiviCRM thing. How many folks have actually played with it, downloaded it, tried it, used it in the room? Raise your hands. Not too many. Okay, cool. So we won't be going over old material. So Civi started about 8 years ago, and the vision was to create an open source, unified, web accessible platform that was focused around civic sector organizations. So that's where the Civi part comes from. And by civic sector organizations, we mean nonprofits here in the States, often called NGOs in other parts of the world, as well as governmental entities, educational institutions, arts institutions, pretty much anything that isn't a profit-making commercial business. A bunch of us who had been working with nonprofits back 7, 8 years ago perceived that nonprofits had some tools to help with fundraising and to do some email communications, but the tendency was that those tools were putting data into very small data silos, and so they had a mailing list, and they had some donors over here, and they had some card files, and they might have had an Access database, and then they might have had a static website, but all the pieces were all disconnected. And we were sort of watching what was happening in terms of the development of customer relationship management tools for-profit organizations, and it started to make sense to us that it would be good to have something like that for civic sector organizations. And at that time, we were also getting really excited about the open source software movement, and it seemed to us it would be a really good fit to create an open source tool where organizations in the civic sector that don't necessarily tend to compete with each other but could collaborate around building and improving a tool that they could all use to do their mission and to hopefully make the world a better place. So we started building CiviCRM. We had some early partners with folks who were working on the Howard Dean campaign and using Drupal for that, and they were looking for some way a more structured way to store information about the constituents that they were doing outreach to and organizing. And so that was a good fit and sort of gave us an instant community and helped us get started. And from that time on, we've basically been building out the project. The CiviCRM project is a nonprofit in and of itself, and it uses both crowdfunding mechanisms as well as foundation funding as well as sponsored work in order to keep moving ahead, which means we don't usually have such a fancy space to meet in, but this is really cool. So Civi includes capabilities around fundraising and donor management, around putting on events, online event registration and managing events, membership programs, blast newsletters, as well as regular postal mailings, case management, and actually several other pieces. And the whole idea, again, is let's have an antidote to data silos. Let's have all our information in one place. A donor, maybe a client, maybe somebody who goes to an event, maybe somebody who gets a newsletter. We want all that stuff in one place. Our first release was in March 2005, and we just released version 4.3, and that's about 15 releases, 16 releases later this April. Initially, Civi was built to integrate with Drupal. Okay. Subsequently, we really had the sense that we wanted this tool to be as widely used as possible and not limited to one CMS. And so kind of evolved the architecture so that it was more CMS independent and a thin layer to integrate with several CMSs. And the next CMS we added was Joomla. And finally, back in February of 2012, we saw the light. and realized that what we really wanted to do was integrate with WordPress. And I think it's a really good fit because there are a lot of nonprofits and a lot of civic sector organizations that have adopted WordPress or are anxious to adopt WordPress. And so having this combination we think is really great. So what the heck does this actually do? And I'm just going to give you a couple of little snapshots. Dana's going to dive a little deeper, and then for those of us who stay with us, even deeper. So this is an example of a point-and-click configured online contribution workflow where basically they use CiviCRM to configure a donation portal and giving levels and what kind of information you want to collect from the donor. Civi comes with a bunch of different payment processor plugins. So basically, it doesn't require any coding at all to create as many donation portals as you want on your CiviCRM plus WordPress site. And these pages become part of your WordPress theme and basically tightly integrated. And so if somebody comes to a WordPress site, they give some money, they go into the CiviCRM database, and it's all cool. On the back end, staff at an organization will have a consolidated view of any of their constituents. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of tabs here on the screen because this particular example, they're using almost all the parts of Civi. But Civi is very component organized so that you can turn off memberships or turn it on, turn off events, et cetera, and basically use the pieces that you need. But you have one place to get all the information about a constituent, what money they've given, what letters you've written to them, what phone calls, what relationships they have to other people in your database, et cetera. There is, of course, a lot of search capabilities where you can find contacts and organize them into saved searches for lots of different purposes, although mailing list is probably one of the most popular. And this is just a screenshot of a search result. And then there's a dashboard that each user can have to basically track what's going on in terms of what's important to them. What's our event income looking like? What are donations looking like? What new memberships have come in this month? And basically so all this in one place. And you can see that this dashboard is actually integrated into the WordPress admin. So when you select CiviCRM and go to this particular URL, you see your user dashboard. Tiny bit about architecture. Lobo's going to dive a lot more into this, but basically CiviCRM and all three CMSs that we work with are on the LAMP stack, MySQL database, PHP, and we have sort of in that middle part shows the part that's sort of the integration layer that integrates around authentication and user permissions and page rendering. But then the bulk of the code base of Civi is sort of a separate piece, and it's a pretty heavy plugin as WordPress plugins go, but it also does a lot. We've been around for a while and have been working hard to improve the product. This is a report card basically from N10, which is sort of the primary nonprofit technology organization. And it's comparing some of the various software offerings. And most of these, as you can see, are proprietary closed-source software offerings with some big budgets. But if you look across at CiviCRM, you look like we're doing pretty good in terms of how folks who are using the software feel about us. We were pretty excited by that. This was from the same report, and it's looking at market penetration. And it's looking at it by size of organization. And it's kind of a big chart to analyze, but the bottom line is that CiviCRM is doing quite well against most of its competitors, particularly in the lower side of the market, of the nonprofit market in terms of budget size. So we were the second in adoption rate behind Salesforce for the three bottom tiers. And then it drops off a little bit as you get to some of the larger organizations. So to the extent that you may be getting customers for your WordPress sites who are small to medium-sized nonprofits, CiviCRM is kind of in a sweet spot for you. Some examples of folks who are using Civi right now, some household names like Amnesty International and New York State Senate, and some geeky brands which have joined our community and been really active, like Electronic Frontier Foundation and Free Software Foundation and Wikimedia Foundation also uses CiviCRM for their fundraising efforts. So we have a nice range of folks in our community, and it's growing quite rapidly. We have been tracking downloads by CMS and have been really excited to see that the WordPress adoption rate is jumping up really quickly, and even though we're really only a year into it, I expect that it will exceed at least the Joomla adoption rates pretty quickly here, and probably catching up to Drupal in the not too distant future. In terms of budget sizes, just real quickly, again, most of the folks that are using Civi are probably in the under 500K size from the organization, but we have some that are 3 million to 10 million and more than 10 million. And this is pretty interesting in terms of who's using Civi, and this is by sector. And you can see that it's pretty evenly distributed from educational to religious, faith-based organizations, political campaigns, arts and environment, kind of all over the place. So there's a really wide variety of organizations currently using it, and that means that there's a pretty wide variety of opportunity to actually market to other folks that might be able to benefit from it. Hopefully some of whom are your clients or folks from organizations in this room. Civi is internationalized. It's been fully translated into about 18 languages, including Russian and Mandarin and several other bizarre ones. Those aren't bizarre, but no, I was thinking about, there's a Uzbeki translation and a couple of others that are a bit surprising. And most of the adoption, as you see in the blue, is still in the United States, but we have a pretty strong community in the United Kingdom and Australia, New Zealand, and building in the rest of Europe as well as Asia. So we do a lot of online communication with the project. We've got a blog, we've got a wiki for some documentation as well as a community developed book. There's a community forum for support and a really active IRC channel. We have a public issue tracker where you can see everything that's going on in terms of the development of the software. A couple of mailing lists, a big newsletter. And we've recently moved all our version control from SVN to GitHub in order to help encourage collaboration with other developers in the community, and we're pretty excited about that. We also do some offline communication, and this is some pictures of some recent conferences and sprints, and they're pretty fun if anybody wants to join us. Pretty cash and lots of good food. So offline, we've been having North American conferences, and for the last 2 years, conferences in the United Kingdom and Europe. And we also do a lot of sprinting, including sort of lengthy retreat type sprints. We're having a week-long sprint in Nevada City out in the country next week. And if anyone is free and wants to come do some work on the project and have some good food and be in a beautiful spot, talk to me. We also have local meetups, including we just organized our first Global Civi Day, where we had meetups in 22 different cities in, I think, 8 or 9 different countries, all on the same day. So to promote local collaboration. We've got a core team of 6 that work full-time on the project, and a community manager recently who helps us get everybody engaged. And then there's a pretty large and growing integrator community, many of whom contribute code as well as evangelizing for the project. And we do rely on some of the larger adopters to get sponsorship in order to improve the project and add new features. And our model is to really try to release early, release often, and we tend to iterate rather than looking for perfection. Sometimes that's great, sometimes it's a drag, but that's how we're going. But we've managed to really build the project and add a whole lot of stuff to the platform in a pretty short time. And we're really focused on the end user. Our forums are very active with folks talking to each other, talking to the core team about what we can do to make it better, and try to focus on usability as much as possible. So lastly, for me, a pitch. As Zach mentioned, we're having our annual North American conference in Berkeley tomorrow and the next day. And there's going to be several WordPress-oriented sessions, as well as lots of other people talking about CiviCRM, both from the end user side and the developer side. So if you think you want to learn more and find more about the project and meet other people who are using it, we're offering a 50% discount code for the folks who are at this meeting. And you would use the WP Civi Meetup discount code if you're interested in that. And if you haven't written that down or forget it, we can give it to you later. And it would be really great to see a few more of you folks there. You can register online at sf2013.civicrm.org. For those of you who can't make it but might be interested in connecting with the local CiviCRM community, we have meetups bi-monthly, either hosted by Wikimedia folks or Electronic Frontier Foundation. And Corinne's going to be passing around a piece of paper, and you can throw your email address on it if you're interested in being notified about the meetups and perhaps coming and joining us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dana, who is a real WordPress person, unlike me, and a WordPress developer who's come out for the conference, but also to join us at the meetup, and from New York. And I think she's a New York WordPress person, so it goes to their meetup.
I have my notes here. Yes, so I just came in today from New York. I am part of the New York community. We go to the meetup every month in New York, so you might see my name around there. I am part of the Tadpole Collective, which actually met at the New York City meetup, and then we became a collective, so it's kind of cool about that's one thing I love about WordPress is like the community and how you meet people, and so we build relationships. So I'm very excited to be here. Forgot what I was going to say already, sorry. So that's who I work with and what I do. In general, in WordPress stuff, I'm more the plugin back dashboard configurator person, right? I don't do the theming or front-end development, and I don't do too much of the server-side stuff. I'm kind of stuck in the middle there. So when I started using open source stuff in 2007, maybe, and I dabbled with Joomla, and I like ran into Drupal, and I was like, I cannot do these. It's too much for me. But through that, I learned about CiviCRM. So I've been using CiviCRM with Drupal for many years now. And then last year, when CiviCRM, I said, whoa, it's finally a part of WordPress. That opens up a whole new world for me, because if you're a nonprofit, or if somebody asks you that I need a membership, and I need an event, something for my events, and I need to fundraise, like you need to use 3 or 4 or 5 plugins to do that, and now you can just use Civi, and it does a lot more things, which we'll go into more detail later, for generating reports and queries and whatnot. So I think that is a very powerful tool, especially if you're a nonprofit. So I'm just going to show you a couple sites I have. One is an actual live site. This is a very small nonprofit actually in New York that does reading groups and writing groups for disadvantaged communities, and I don't even know all the stuff they do. I just know they do cool stuff. And so they have this membership page, and this membership page here actually has these three buttons, and it says become a member, sustain a member, or make a donation, and all of these are Civi pages. So once I click on that and I go to become a member, this is now a Civi page. So people don't even know that you're leaving you're using a different software, and it just brings up the information you need that you've configured in the backend. And so after we split up here, we're going to show a little more detail of what it looks like in the backend and how you set these things up so you can put them into your website. So that is one example of like ways to use it. They don't use it yet, but you can use it for your mailing list. You can use it, which basically just have the subscription thing there, and it goes into your database, and so on. Another thing which I think is cool, and I actually need to log in for this. Let me just do this, if it's okay. Sorry, I don't know how to use a Mac. Wait, did I spell this wrong now? I don't know how to use a Mac, sorry. So, this is just a sample demo site we have up, and again, it just plugs in to the site, so you don't even know that you're leaving it. This subscription site actually goes into Civi. And over the next 2 days at CiviCon, I'm going to be going in more detail about this. One is more for like, I'm a nonprofit and I want to know how to use this. I want to be an administrator of Civi with my WordPress site, and we're just going to go over details about how do I create an event in CiviCRM, and then how do I put that into my WordPress site, and then how does that go public so I can share it with people. It's basically, if you think of it, this is how I think of it. Content, WordPress is the way to go, right? WordPress organizes your information by date, by month, by year, by category, and it makes it look great. Contacts, you have to use Civi. Civi organizes information for you, and you can do so much. You can see what one person has done with your organization overall. And then on Friday, we're going to do more of a developer-ish kind of workshop. We're going to get into some code with how to theme with CiviCRM on the front end, and how to set up some things, how to configure CiviCRM. You're not going to go to the WordPress repo and plugin repo to find Civi, right? So you're going to go to civicrm.org, and you're going to download it, and you're going to install it via FTP or via some SSH or whatnot, and you're going to install Civi that way. So it is two apps coming together. And are my slides here? We're going to go over the WordPress. That's a bad screenshot. The dashboard that we have to go through. So when we break the groups up now, we're going to go into more detail about how to set up a contribution page, an event page, and a mailing. And then use CiviCRM. I'm going to go to the part 2. CiviCRM has put in here the shortcode. And that shortcode plugs in the information from CiviCRM, so then you can put that content into your WordPress website and use an event calendar or whatnot. So we're going to explore a little more of that. So that's what I got in a nutshell right now. How do you guys, I want to do a show of hands, right? So we want to know who wants to stick around for
okay, so
development.
Are you guys going to do some more of this?
More of this.
Going into this stuff?
Yeah.